Hello, everybody, and welcome into HQ Spotlight. I'm Katie Mox alongside Amanda Guerra. And Amanda,
what's up, girl?
It is good to be hosting with you today.
We've never hosted together before.
I know.
So this is an iconic day in history.
A total iconic day in history. We're happy that you're here along with it. But, sister, hours away from the MLB trade deadline.
Yes, it has been a somewhat hectic, like 50%. We've seen some big names go down in the trade market so far. Let's take a look at some of the trades that have happened. Eugenio Suarez, that was the biggest one by far. That was the bat everybody was after. Probably the number one prospect, if you can call trade prospects. I think you can. Now it's Seattle. Jim Bowden saying the Mariners are now a World Series contender with Eugenio Suarez in that lineup there. Also, Shane Bieber headed to the Blue Jays, trying to hold on to their spot in the top of the AL East. But with trade deadline today, we are talking about some of the biggest what-ifs in trade history. What if Aaron Judge was making history as a Brave instead of a Yankee? And what if Griffey spent the middle part of his career at then Shea Stadium going up against the Yankees in the Subway World Series? What if?
Wow.
Let's talk about that with baseball history aficionado, expert also, but you're going to be a history aficionado in this. Matt Snyder with the tie. Matt, love the tie. Congratulations on that. Let's start in 1999. The Mets actually had a trade, in place for Ken Griffey Jr. Even the GM of the Mariners said at the time, I think we're close to a deal. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was Griffey who rejected this. The thought of him, even this graphic, is disgusting to look at. Matt, what if this had happened?
Yeah, that part's true. Griffey basically was vetoing deals to everywhere except Cincinnati because he wanted to play for the Reds. He wanted to go home where his father played. So the Reds with Jim Bowden had all the leverage, by the way, on that. But let's say Griffey was amenable to a deal to the Mets. You're talking about in 1999, the Mets made the playoffs. In 2000, they were in, as you said, the Subway Series against the Yankees. The Yankees, of course, won that series. But the Mets had Jay Payton in center field all year. Marginal, decent everyday player, but Ken Griffey Jr. was one of the best players in baseball. So if you replace Jay Payton with Ken Griffey Jr. in that Mets lineup, man, it feels like maybe the Mets might have won that World Series there over the Yankees. It would have at least been a lot more competitive. Maybe it goes to 7 games. Game 7 against the Yankees and Mets back in 2000, right in the middle of the Yankees dynasty, that seems like it would have been incredible must-watch TV.
It absolutely would have, but like I said, him in a Mets uniform, as a baseball fan, it's not good to look at. It makes your stomach hurt. Let's go 15 years later, 2014, and then 22-year-old Aaron Judge. He was still a prospect with the Yankees. The Yankees were working to replace a retiring Derek Jeter, of all people. But this was great at the time. Andrelton Simmons, shortstop for the Braves, one of the best defensive players at the time. And this is wild. They were going to send Aaron Judge, again prospect, Luis Severino, Gary Sanchez. I'm more curious, Matt, what this would have looked like for the Braves at the time instead of the Yankees. Could we have been talking dynasty?
Oh, it would have been unbelievable. I mean, that's how highly valued Jason Hayward was at the time. Hayward was the centerpiece going back to the Yankees along with Andrelton Simmons. And like you said, Simmons replacing Jeter, the Yankees get Hayward, but then Gary Sanchez, Luis Severino, and Aaron Judge. Holy cow. The first thing is the Braves, remember, they went through that radical rebuild through the 2000 teens, through the middle of it. Freddie Freeman was the only guy they kept around. They traded everybody else, such as Justin Upton, Craig Kimbrell, a lot of other guys. They would have had Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez coming up, waiting in the wings, ready to take over, and I assume they still would have signed Ronald Acuna Jr. internationally. You're talking about Ronald Acuna Jr. and Aaron Judge in the same outfield there in the late 2000 teens with Freddie Freeman still at first base. How about that for a middle of the batting order? That's unbelievable. Yeah, the Braves would have been something else. That would have been incredible.
I was about to say, throw Freddie Freeman in there. Poor Jacqueline DiAgostino, the things that could have been. Not that long ago, I wasn't too familiar with this. 2018, Bryce Harper, member of the Nationals, in a trade to the Astros. What blows my mind about this, for me, this is the one where the Nationals really, they effed up. They wanted the right return, if I'm not mistaken, for Bryce Harper. Didn't get what they wanted, and then he becomes a free agent, so they got nothing for him, Matt.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the 3 prospect names on there that were being discussed in the rumor, it wasn't any really guys who turned out to be big names. You're talking about Abraham Toro, Josh James, guys like that. So at least the Nationals would have gotten something back for Harper, but instead, yeah, this would have been a rental for the Astros, but still, seeing who they would have had to give up, it seems like a no-brainer, especially knowing that they lost in the ALCS to a juggernaut Red Sox team. Remember, though, the Astros won 103 games that year, and they had an outfield spot that was kind of whole. Marwin Gonzalez in left field, Josh Reddick in right field. They could have done something with those guys and put Bryce Harper in right field and Bryce Harper in the middle of that lineup for the defending champs going head-to-head against a 108-win Red Sox team. Man, that would have been an incredible ALCS. And, of course, then the Dodgers on the NL side for the World Series. We might have seen a rematch between the Astros and Dodgers after an epic 7-game World Series in 2017 to see a repeat. That would have been something else if the Astros could have pulled that off.
This would not have bugged me as much. I feel like he kind of like has the grit to be in Houston. I think they would have embraced him there. Staying in the state of Texas, how about this? 2003, Alex Rodriguez was almost a member of the Boston Red Sox. Yes, of all things Boston. And I love what he has said about this because he was watching Boston go up against the Yankees, going 7 games there in the ALCS. And he's just like, they're one thing away. I can be that piece. But the MLBA shot this down. Why did this not happen?
It was something with A-Rod's salary. He was going to give a lot of it back, and that's why the Major League Baseball Players Association said, no, we're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into players altering their salaries just to make trades happen and stuff like that. But the interesting thing to me about this trade is it ended up working out for the Red Sox just fine. Now they lost in the ALCS to the Yankees in 2003, but the Yankees then lost to the Marlins in the World Series. That got Grady Little fired. Terry Francona took over there. Theo Epstein made a few drastic moves the next season, in season, such as trading Nomar Garciaparra to the Cubs. And then the Red Sox won the World Series in 2004 and again in 2007. Manny Ramirez was going to be in that deal going back to Texas that brought A-Rod to Boston. We don't know how things would have gone for the Red Sox if they traded away Manny Ramirez, if they still would have won in 2004 and 2007. It's very interesting. Maybe they still do. Maybe they win more titles, but maybe they win neither title. And maybe we're still talking about the Red Sox having that curse of the Bambino hanging over them. It's one of those like really famous what ifs because getting A-Rod right in the middle of his prime would have been a great move. But giving up Manny Ramirez, you just don't know. It's one of those moves that's really fun to talk about.
Yankees fans, do you think like I feel like it should haunt them because I'm not a Yankees fan. I respect you. But knowing that he actually wanted to be a member of the Red Sox instead of the Yankees, like, that's iconic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they did win the World Series in 2009, and A-Rod had a huge World Series. I'm one of those guys that always says if you win a World Series title, you don't want to change anything leading up to it. But I'm a Cubs fan. I've only gotten to see one. Maybe Yankees fans are greedy, and they think just 2009 is not good enough. We should add multiple.
And it does say something about the Yankees that so many of these what-if deals do involve the Yankees, including this next one. Yeah, exactly. 1996, Mariano Rivera, almost member of the Mariners. And what's crazy to me about this one is Derek Jeter was actually involved in this. 21 years old. He was struggling at shortstop. So they turned to the Mariners for help. And, Matt, what I really need to know is, apparently, a lot of Yankees members, they went into George Steinbrenner's office and said, like, do not make this deal. Was George Costanza involved in this?
Absolutely.
Right?
No, remember, George Costanza, what was it? It was Jim Leyritz and Bernie Williams for Barry Bonds was the trade that George Costanza wanted to do. So he took big swings, but I just didn't feel like it would have been that big of a swing just to get Fermin in there to put in front of Derek Jeter. This feels like it could have derailed the dynasty, right? Like you put somebody else in front of Derek Jeter, you don't play him, you might mess with his career. Maybe he ends up going to a different team and getting good. Meanwhile, you ship Mariano Rivera out of there. 4 titles after 1996 for the Yankees with Mariano Rivera, 5 in all with Rivera and Jeter. Yeah, that really feels like they totally dodged a bullet there. In spite of the presence of George Costanza.
he never did get that calzone to him. Okay, 2000. Let's talk about another future Hall of Famer, Albert Pujols, 1999. Look, granted, when they did draft him, he was drafted in the 13th round, 402nd overall. They did not know the future Hall of Famer he would become. 703 home runs, almost a member of then the Montreal Expos. How did this happen?
Well, yeah, so the big deal was Tony La Russa and Fernando Tatis Sr., which is fun just to have Tatis Sr. involved in this one when we know his son is a superstar now. They could not get along. He was the third baseman for the Cardinals at the time, and the Cardinals' third base prospect was Albert Pujols. So the part of the discussion was if they thought Tatis was going to bounce back and if he could coexist with Tony La Russa, then they might keep Tatis around, and then Albert Pujols might have gotten shipped out to Montreal as part of a deal that brought over Steve Klein, a reliever from the Expos, to the Cardinals. That would have been an all-time gaffe to send Pujols. Obviously, nobody knew Pujols would become one of the greatest players in baseball history. I know another part of the discussion is always, hey, would that have saved baseball in Montreal? Probably not. It's fun to think about like Vladimir Guerrero Sr. and Albert Pujols being on the Expos, but that was a 67-win Expos team. Not sure how much better Albert Pujols could have made them, even as fun as that would have been. I actually think he would have just gotten traded probably 2 years later to somebody else. And then we're talking about a bunch of other teams whose futures were altered with Albert Pujols getting traded to them.
Yeah, and not just that. I mean, if he kept getting traded and traded and traded, I mean, at some point he was going to get that big contract. Like, would he have put up the numbers that he eventually did? Next one, keep in mind, we got a Bay Area girl here in the building. Barry Bonds was with the Pirates at the time, 1992. Almost became a member of the Braves. They wanted to keep him for a very long time. I think if anything, it should be Giants fans that this makes your stomach just turn over. What happened with this one?
Well, there's fallout with the Yankees too. Allow me to explain for a second. First of all, I will say just right off the top, and maybe Katie will be happier about this, I think Bonds always wanted to go to San Francisco. Willie McCovey out there, his dad's history out there, Willie Mays out there. I think Bonds wanted to play in San Francisco anyway, but let's just say that this deal went through, and Jim Leyland, Pirates manager at the time, was integral in making sure the Pirates did not make that deal, sending Bonds to the Braves there. But if he played for the Braves, and if they were able to re-sign him, that money means the Braves don't have the money to sign Greg Maddux in free agency. Then the other team competing for Greg Maddux and Barry Bonds, by the way, in free agency was the Yankees. So the Yankees probably signed Greg Maddux. So we've got chain reactions all over the place here. But yeah, I think Bonds' heart was always in San Francisco. That's where he wanted to be anyway. But it is interesting to think if the Braves sign Barry Bonds here, in front of all those division titles through the 90s, do they win more World Series than just the one? And again, but then they don't sign Greg Maddux. So how's the pitching staff look around Glavine and Smoltz without Maddux there? A lot of fallout there.
Okay, I'm going to give you two last questions, and you can only answer one. Who did the Cubs miss out on, your team, that you wish they would have gotten? Or out of these trades, potential trades, which one do you wish would have happened?
Man, there's been so many whiffs on the Cubs. I always say I don't want to change anything before 2016, so I'll answer the second one. The most interesting one to me really is the Braves one with Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez, and Luis Severino in the minors, because it feels like Jason Hayward getting acquired for the Yankees before we see what happens with Judge. And remember how good Gary Sanchez was when he came up, how good Severino was when he came up. Hayward feels like he would have been kind of a bust in the eyes of Yankees fans, as well as Simmons not really hitting. He's a great defender at short, but he wasn't really a great hitter. It feels like Yankees fans would have despised both Hayward and Simmons, given what happened with Judge, and to a lesser extent Sanchez and Severino. So that one is the very interesting one to me.
We probably all would have hated the Braves like a lot of people hate the Yankees right now. Matt, thank you so much for this. I know you're very busy on trade deadline day. And if you want to know about the latest trades coming down in Major League Baseball, make sure to turn it over to CBS Sports HQ. Scan the QR code, go on the app, go online. If you have a Pluto TV or whatever those things are called, it's going to be on there. It's the app. Make sure to get every highlight, but also right now on trade deadline day, every single trade that's coming in.